Hello, members of Yes Parenting for Happy Families and anybody else who's watching this video. It is my great pleasure today to welcome Nicola Torres as my interviewee. Nicola is going to be joining me in my subscription group as guest expert, and I love it when the guest experts join us. They come in once a month and they bring their own area of expertise to support all of the mums that I join with on a daily basis to walk out this wonderful yes parenting journey. Nicola is a mum of 5 living in Germany, and we met in a Facebook group as part of a free challenge over a year ago now, but we really connected and we've tried to meet kind of every couple of weeks or as frequently as possible ever since, to have a cup of tea over Skype. We're both mums, we're both business women, so we kind of share a lot of the same things. So Nicola, welcome to being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to support you in your work, not just in the group, but bringing what I can to partner with you.
Thank you. So Nicola is the founder of NITU, and in a minute I'm going to ask Nicola to share where that word NITU comes from, because she just shared it with me just before we started recording, and it's the most extraordinary story. But Nicola is passionate about empowering women globally. So this translates into partnering with women in the third world, teaching women in the first world how to find their passion and create a life that allows them to live life on their terms. And as guest expert in our group, Nicola is going to focus specifically on dealing with overwhelm. So really, really valuable stuff. So before we explore anything else, I would love you to share where this word NITU comes from.
Well, NITU is a Garifuna word, and I'm hoping that I'm not butchering the word, but that's how I hear it in my mind, is NITU. Garifuna is the language of people that were originally coming from Africa. They were being brought over to be enslaved, and they got shipwrecked right before the Caribbeans. They came on land. They were never enslaved, and this language developed from there. And NITU means my sister. And because I'm working with women all over, and it encapsulates so much the spirit of how I feel we all are. We are all the same, whether we are in the third world or whether we're over here. We all just want to take care of our families. We all deal with the same insecurities. We all deal with the same longings to bring life forward. And so I thought that would encapsulate the work really well.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, you describe yourself as a world traveler at heart. I know you're currently living in Germany, which is your home country, but you're not married to a German, you're married to an American. So share a little bit about the travels that you have done so far, which I know you're not doing right now because you're raising your family, but tell us a little bit about where your travels have taken you.
Well, that's why it is at heart, because right now I don't get to do it to the extent that I would love to. But before I started my family, I lived in Los Angeles. I spent time in South Africa doing community development work. I spent time in New York City to do community development work. I was in New Zealand, in Malaysia to teach over there. So I have seen quite a bit of the world, and that has always stayed with me. And I'm hoping to step back into it more as family allows. There's just a lot more to consider than just up and go these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love New York City. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. I think I've been 5 times now.
Oh, wow.
But where is on your bucket list to visit? I
want to go back to South Africa. Okay. I really fell in love with Cape Town and had a great time working with endangered kids who were basically street kids, and they were being taught there, and there are just so many fond memories. So that one would be my very first one to want to go back. I've yet to touch the Southern American continent. I don't have relations there really, so that would be a little further down the bucket list that I would like to see.
Yeah, amazing. So you are a wife and mum of 5 children. Tell us a little bit about your family, how old they are, and what life in Germany is like.
It's dark and rainy. No, my oldest is 11 and my youngest is 4. So we spaced them basically every 2 years apart. my husband always wanted 4. I said, let's take it one at a time. And then I wasn't ready to quite close the chapter, and surprise number 5 came along, and we're good now. We're complete, and it's fun. The kids are getting settled here in Germany. They go to school. It's mandatory. It's no options around that. And since we have the American and German background, we spent the first 6 years of my oldest son's life in America, and then we relocated to Germany. So we've been here for a little over 5.5 years, and the kids are settled, and it's good for now.
And any truthful parent will acknowledge that parenting is as much full of the joys as it is full of the stresses and the challenges. What for you, being a mum of 5, are like the biggest challenges?
Well, it's getting easier now that they're a little bit older, but I very, very vividly remember the days where a trip to Target or, to a grocery store by yourself, equaled a day in the spa, because the constant having to be available 24/7, and the very physicalness of that, because you have to pick up, you have to feed, you have to prepare food, you have to care very physically. That's very exhausting, and it's very lonely. I think even if you have mom friends, but especially if you come from a corporate job and you jump into motherhood, and it's the grandest, most amazing job, it's the most exhausting and isolating job as well. And I think most moms are really not prepared. Well, you can't really prepare for that, because it's such a dramatic shift, and the guilt that comes with it. When here you are so in love with this little being, and you feel so guilty for feeling so alone and overwhelmed, and you don't think you can talk to anyone about it, because you're a mom. Everybody's a mom. Why do you have trouble with it?
Right.
So that was definitely a reality I went through, especially as they were younger. Now that the older can help the younger one a little bit, or I can close the door for an interview like this and know they're most likely going to be okay. The house is most likely going to be okay. And that's a freedom that alleviates a lot of that overwhelmed feeling.
Yeah. One of the things I'm very interested in, because I have 2 children, and they're 19 months apart. So, that brought with its own challenges when they were younger, because it's quite a close age gap. But, for a while now, they've been increasingly independent, and I haven't had that kind of lots of different ages going on. I haven't had the numbers. So one of the things I'm really interested to hear from you, from your perspective, is how has your parenting changed, or your relationship with your kids, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with being a mum? How has that changed as you've had more children, and you've obviously learned new things with every single one that's come along?
Well, one thing that is super helpful is to recognize just developmental stages. Even if you've read them in a book, like the 3s. You hear about the terrible 2s, but the terrible 3s are really where it's at, because now they become verbal, and now they establish their own first boundary of saying no. This is me, this is my will, this is what I want, and they say no, and you have to deal with that. And it's tiring with the first one. With the second one, you're like, oh, wait, I remember that. And by the third, you're like, okay, well, you don't want that. Well, what do you like? And you learn to change language. And the reason why I tell kids, I think it's just because it's so much practice. Because we're not used to automatically extending that kind of grace and that kind of respect and that kind of power to a little human being, especially the one that has been so dependent for their lives on you for the longest time. And now they're growing, well, they're always growing up, but now they're able to show it much more willfully that they're their own person. And at the beginning of letting go has already started. You say they're leaving the house at 18, but when they're 3 years old, that's really when you start giving them their power and their will. And it's a language that you have to learn that takes practice. Well, awareness, but really it takes a lot of practice. And so now on number 5, that was still an exhausting time, because they do, they're three, so they're very irrational in what they want. Green cup over blue cup, today it's spaghetti, tomorrow I hate it, those kind of things. And you can't prepare for it. But it's much easier to respond to it because, it's not personal. It's not that they're defiant to you. It's not that they're trying to vex you. They're just practicing their own boundaries. And it's much easier to give them that power and to watch them thrive in it as they find they can say no and they're respected, and to help them learn when they can't have their will because it's situationally not working or because it's not safe, how to deal with that. So that's just practice. So to answer your question, what has changed practice? A lot more ease, even though I think I started very laid back. The practice helps. Having older siblings, someone to chime in when I can't, can be helpful.
Yeah. And did you notice that the more challenging phases, when you have your first child, you kind of feel like that phase is going on forever. But I'm guessing by the time you get to number 5, it's like, oh wow, they were 3 and now they're 5. It just happens so much more quickly as well. I mean, obviously the time is the same, but your perception of it, I suppose, do you find that it's like these stages just fly by so much more quickly?
Yeah. I find myself really trying to slow down and savor it all up because it does go by so fast. And there's this saying that the years are short. The days are long, but the years are short. And that's really what it is. Sometimes the days feel so long and so hard. And, it's 9 o'clock and I'm counting down the hours to bedtime because I just want it to be over with because it's a hard day. But in the end, I know very well that every time I get to hold a hand or get to squeeze someone or get to kiss or get someone to look me in the eye, that's not gonna last. And so I try to slow down and really take it in, because with the busyness that comes with a large family as ours, it gets overlooked very easily. And I make a point to connect with the kids at least at night. So I tuck everyone in individually and I lay down with them and I connect with each one, because it happens that, if there's a play date, I literally don't see them. But even if they're in the house, if everything runs smoothly and fine, they might not come and connect with me and I might not go and connect with them. And so I make a point to do that because it does go by fast.
Yeah, I'm very aware now that my boy, Joss is about to turn 11 in a couple of weeks and Pete will be 13 in the summer. And, they still both leap into my arms for a hug. If I say to Joss, I love you, Jossie, he says, I love you too, Mummy. There's still like all of those beautiful things. Now, I mean, it's possible that may stick around. I mean, they won't always be able to jump into my arms. They'll get too big. But, it's possible that all of that lovely stuff will stay through their teenage years. But I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some time where, Joss will decide that he absolutely does not love me. Or at least he's not going to tell me, and I'm so aware now of how precious those moments are. Or, he comes into my office just to hug me and not even to ask for anything, just to hug me. And I'm really aware of that. And, like Pete, who's going to be 13, so, he now reads to himself when he goes to bed. Like, he doesn't even want me to read to him. Joss still wants me to read to him, but he's reading his own thing. You just notice how you never know when it's going to be the last moment that you get to have that type of connection. It is very, very precious. But when you have a small child and you're just like, like you said, it's 9 o'clock in the morning and you're counting down the hours until your husband gets home or until they go to bed, and it's really hard at those times to kind of be softened into that kind of wonderment of it. So one of the things that it says here in your little bio is that what you're doing now, as well as doing, the work with the women in the third world, is reaching out to other mums and letting them know how not to lose themselves or to find themselves again in the daily mountain of everything. And when I read that phrase, the daily mountain of everything, that's where the instant kind of sense of potential overwhelm comes in for me. I mean, I seem to get overwhelmed less nowadays, but I know that that's because I managed to get on top of my clutter. I've managed to get on top of my self-care, and I'm also getting better at asking for help. But I mean, I've spent so much of my life in overwhelm. So talk a little bit more about this passion for being alongside other mums in a supportive role, and particularly about dealing with overwhelm.
Well, I'd like to share a little bit of my own story of getting lost. And it's a curious thing, because you don't realize that that's what's happening, because you're dealing with, you know, your kid, and you're trying to find your footing in this new world, and depending on your media influences in your own family, you have a certain set of expectations of how that's supposed to look like, because no one tells you that it's going to look like the way you make it to look like. So in that initial, what am I supposed to do? How does this work? We look for outside examples, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, but there's also a lot of Pinterest type ideas out there. And so we're trying to find a new orientation on how can I be that? And so your mind is busy not sleeping, not forgetting to eat, feeding your kid, laundry, and what is everybody else doing? And it gets confusing. And so you find your own rhythm. You might add another child, or maybe two. And by the time they're there, you've lost yourself, because you've just been keeping up and keeping up and keeping up. Because you can't take a break. I mean, you can, but it's hard. It takes what you just mentioned. It takes asking for help or receiving it. It takes giving yourself permission to say, I need a break. I just need a break. And that's hard to admit, because really, what are you doing? You're just at home, right? Or maybe you're working and you're just at home and have your kid, but why would you need a break? Because you need one. But it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of awareness to give yourself permission to say, I need that break, or I need help, or this is not working. And so oftentimes I find for myself too, I got to the point where I lost all the passions. You know, I was a world traveler. I was teaching young kids, and none of that had anything to do with my life anymore. And I was wondering if it ever would have anymore, and how. And daily life was hard. Yes, it was fun, and yes, it was rewarding, but it was also very tiring. And I remember being in town by myself. My husband had the kids, and I'm going through town. I'm like, this is not working. This is just not working for me. Something needs to change. And Albert Einstein says you can't change circumstances with the same thoughts that got you there. So I'm walking through town. I need a new thought. I need a new thought. I need a new thought. Because I literally, it's like, something's got to give. And if I had looked at the clock at the time, there was a thought that hit. I could have told you exactly what time it was and where in town I was when this idea hit. I ain't doing it if I ain't feeling it. And I gave myself permission to really hone in and find, how do I feel about stuff? And I'm not doing it if it doesn't feel good, just as an experiment, because I'm not that brave to break open all the rules, but I gave myself that little space of 30 days. I'm just gonna experiment with that. And it was an exhausting time to really realize, wow, there's a lot that I listen to a lot of shoulds, and I listen to a lot of what I think other people expect of me or think about, and myself too, my own expectations. As a result of this time of I ain't feeling it, I ain't doing it, I had over 300 pounds worth of stuff, 15 boxes, 20 boxes leave the house. I just decluttered. I started feeling freer. I started being more aware, and it felt new. I almost want to say something new was birthed, but really it was just coming back to who I was and allowing myself to do that. And in that process, I realized, wow, this is not my own story. This is the story of many women, of most women, especially going through that early stage of motherhood. And it came down to giving myself permission to. And in that, realizing that I do need to take care of myself so I can take care of others. I am allowed to have feelings of guilt or feelings of overwhelm, but there's a strategy to get out. I don't have to get stuck there. And so the past 3-4 years have really been instrumental in changing that around, and in receiving more help, or in making more room, or in just sometimes just letting it all go. It's like, I can't, I'm not doing the dishes today, I'm not cleaning up, I just need to sit here and drink my cup of coffee, and I don't want to be interrupted. You know, I just, and being okay with that, because I know at the bottom of my heart, it's not because I don't care, it's because I do care. And I do know that if I don't care about myself first and foremost, I can't care for you anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's been a little bit of my own journey, and giving that permission to others, and holding up the mirror and say, look, this is you right now. This is normal. You are fine, but you don't have to be stuck there anymore.
Amazing. So, without giving away all the wonderful things you're going to be sharing when you're a guest expert, what I would love is, because this interview is going out publicly, so it's not just members of my subscription group that are going to see it. Hopefully, lots of mums will see it. So for the mums who aren't going to have the opportunity to connect with you because they're not yet in the subscription group, what would be your top tips for them if they're experiencing that overwhelm in their life at the moment as a mum? What would be your top tips to them to start turning round in this kind of strategic direction to take them out of it?
Well, there's a short-term solution for today's been a really bad day and I just can't anymore. And then there are long-term solutions to build a better foundation to get out. Short-term, my most favorite one is just take a nap. If the little ones nap, I used to nap. Now I just close the door and tell them, I'm going to take a nap, you be quiet. Or, do something. Or usually if they're in school, I do it while they're in school. Because if you're physically exhausted and your brain is tired, it will perceive everything as worse than it really is, and you can't cope. Yeah. And so taking a nap and giving yourself that rejuvenation that's my personal first go-to, to wake up and be able to look at the situation with different eyes. And there are a lot of other little things, like just go out for a walk, get out of your environment, and which is essentially the same interrupter, because you can come back and look at the situation with different eyes, because you had a chance to move, to get your body going, to get some fresh air, and to release the stressors, the immediate stressors that you feel. Sometimes it's chocolate. Sometimes it's calling a friend and just venting. But then you do need to put on your big girl panties after that and just keep moving. You can't get stuck in the complaining phase, but sometimes it helps to get it out, or to get an outside perspective and saying, yes, I know this and this and this and this is true, but they can tell you, but look, there's also this and this that's going on that's good and helps you to get out. So those are a few tips, just to get out of the immediate overwhelm. But the biggest thing is you need to stop. You need to drop everything you do and refocus, whatever helps you to get there.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing. Okay, so you're coming into my group as a guest expert. You're going to be focusing on how to deal with overwhelm. I love the fact that you're going to be sharing a file that we can keep in the group even after you're no longer there, looking at how to deal with overwhelm in the moment. What I love so much is that everything that you and I ever talk about, and everything about your parenting and your approach, it's so aligned with yes parenting. And I suspect that so much of that comes because you described yourself as being naturally laid back when you became a parent. So a yes response was, sounds very much like the thing you kind of just ended up doing. Whereas I was not laid back at all, mostly because I had a baby who had very severe skin conditions, cried all the time, and all of my instincts went out the window, and I was anchorless, and everybody had their advice on what I should do, and nothing actually seemed to work. So I was not laid back, and I was not relaxed. But I love it, you know, my journey of Yes Parenting has brought me to this place of actually being really able to trust the process of childhood and trust myself and say yes to my needs first in order to say yes to my children's needs. And, you know, that's what I hear coming from you, that in the face of overwhelm, actually the first place that you pay attention is me. And yeah, so valuable. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would love to share on this interview that you haven't had a chance to share because I haven't asked the right questions?
No, I'm good. I've enjoyed this conversation. You know, it's fun when you listen to your own answers coming out, how congruent they sometimes are, or how much of knowledge and wisdom has, you know, welled up that now is ready to come out. So that's been a really fun process to explore.
Brilliant. I know exactly what that's like, and especially when I do the media stuff, and I'll watch, like if it's a TV interview and I'll watch it back, or if it's a radio interview, I'll listen back and I'm like, wow, this woman's really good. And I'm like, what is me? It's like this, wow, I really know my stuff. It's kind of nice to talk about it in a more structured way, isn't it? Because you get to kind of, your knowledge and wisdom is drawn out of you in a way that maybe you wouldn't normally express it. So I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming you into my group. Thank you for your time today. And I'm going to share at the end of this, at the end of the video, I'll share, oh, there's my dog, how best people can contact you. But you have a Facebook group. If people want to connect with you, just share the name of your Facebook group. It
is NITU. It's just the NITU.
Okay. Brilliant.
For the Facebook group, so it should be easy. But if you'd like, I don't know, you let me know. I can make available that file that you're going to have in your group as something for viewers, you know, outside of the group to be available.
Okay,
we can talk about that.
We can chat about that, and we'll see if that works.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.